meeting, October 22nd, 2020. Please join me in a salute to the flag of our nation. Ready? Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up is roll call. Please call the roll.
Board Member Conley.
Present.
Board Member Lucero. Board Member Lucero. Board Member Ritter.
Present.
Board Member Lambert. Board Member Teeter.
Here.
Board Member Thompson. Here. Board Member Stone.
Presente.
Board Member Cry. Board Member Cry. Board Member Reynolds. Board Member Reynolds. Board Member Jones. Here.
That's a quorum, right?
Yes.
So we're good to go. Okay, first up is our consent agenda. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda by email or otherwise? None? Okay. Would anybody from this board like to pull anything from the consent agenda? No. All right, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda. We have the first and second right here. All those in favor, call the roll. It's the only way we can do it. It gets crazy otherwise.
Board Member Conley.
Aye.
Board Member Lucero. Ritter.
Aye.
Board Member Teeter.
Aye.
Board Member Thompson. Aye. Board Member Jones. Aye. Board Member Lambert. And Board Member Lambert.
Yep, I'm not here. Yep,
I heard you, Steve. Okay.
great, thank you.
All right. Everybody is aye on that. So we're going to go for items for
Wait a
action.
minute. I was not
Number
called.
4.
Hold on. I was not called, but I will vote aye.
Oh, you were called, but you just didn't hear it. But okay. All right. Maybe I said that wrong. I'm sorry. You just didn't hear it. Technical difficulties. How's that?
No worries.
Approval, number 4, approval of final allocation methodology for the 2020 Regional Housing Needs Update. Chris.
Thank you. Good morning. I think the board recalls back in August, we brought an information item with the draft allocation methodology to the board meeting, and we held a public hearing soliciting public comment on it. And we didn't receive any comments at the public hearing. And so since that time, we've developed the proposed final allocation methodology for the 2020 Regional Housing Needs Plan update. Essentially, it's pretty easy. Only one unit changed since we brought the draft to you. At the August meeting, there was a shift of 1 unit for the city of Biggs. So nothing much has changed with it. We've reviewed the final with the planning directors group. We've shared it with the stakeholders as well. And so we're bringing forward today to the board the final allocation methodology, which must be approved ahead of approving the Regional Housing Needs Plan itself. And when we met with you in August, at the same time, the California Department of Housing and Community Development was undergoing a 60-day review of the draft methodology, which they're required to do. We received finding letters from them. They thought the methodology was great. It's included as attachment 1 with the memo. They did have one caveat, though, and that was that we make a change to add a single low-income unit to the city of Biggs. And the reason for that is that the draft allocation methodology had 0 low-income units going to Biggs. And so you cannot allocate 0 low or very low units to any jurisdiction. It has to be at least 1. So we did add one for the city of Biggs. And the reason why it was 0 originally was essentially that the way that our methodology worked, Biggs already had enough low-income units to already meet what was going to be required in the methodology anyway. So we just said, well, actually, Biggs had already exceeded it. So we kept it where it was. That's kind of how our methodology worked. So, at this point, the planning directors group is on board with the methodology. HCD is fine with it. The letter is included in attachment 1. We posted it on the website. The stakeholders have taken a look at it, presumably. And then the final allocation methodology is included in attachment number 2 in the memo as well. And we were going to have Andrea Howard from PlaceWorks. Is she in? Oh, great. Okay.
Hi, Chris.
She's having
Can you
trouble
hear
getting
me?
through. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Yes, she is going to provide us with a little more insight into the final allocation methodology. And do we have that file? I might not have shared that with you. That's okay.
I
It
have
is,
slides
yeah.
available if I can be granted screen sharing privileges.
Here you go, Andrea.
Okay. Perfect. Forgot about that technique. Thank you.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I apologize. I had some connectivity issues this morning, but I'm glad to be here with you now. My name is Andrea Howard. I am the consultant to BCAG for the 6th cycle RENA update, serving as your project manager. And like Chris said, we're just going to be going over some of the updates since we last connected. And starting with, let's see if my slides can advance here. Starting with going over the determination that we received from HCD following their 60-day review. And then I'll just be going over some of the minor adjustments we made to the methodology in response to that input from HCD. And finally, we'll provide a brief overview of the draft RENA plan. So the methodology, when HCD reviews the methodology, the most important thing that they are looking for is to ensure that it furthers 5 statutory objectives related to fair housing and GHG reduction. The feedback that we received from HCD really boils down to 3 key points. Importantly, they found that the draft methodology does further the 5 statutory objectives. And again, that is really the main objective that they are looking to ensure. They do also consider the legislative requirements related to other components, and they found just one minor inconsistency with our proposed methodology, highlighting that the government code actually requires that every jurisdiction receive at least 1 unit allocated to it in both the low and the very low income tiers. You may recall that our methodology aims to move all jurisdictions toward an equal distribution of units by income tier over the long term. And based on our analysis of each jurisdiction's existing distribution of units, we found that the city of Biggs has actually already exceeded its allocation of units in the low income tier to meet that equal distribution over the long term. So we had initially proposed that the city of Biggs would receive 0 units in that low income tier. However, this piece of legislation says that that is unlawful. So we have increased the units for Biggs by just 1. We confirmed with HCD that that would be perfectly acceptable to them. And I'll go over on the next slide exactly how we configured that and accommodated that change. And then finally, we heard that they would be open to, this was their exact language, they would be open to us increasing the weighting of the factors that are used in the allocation of overall units to each jurisdiction. You might recall that our methodology uses 5 factors, and they are each weighted at 10%. And then what we call the base allocation, which is each jurisdiction's distribution of units by each jurisdiction's share of the region's anticipated growth. And so that's used as the base allocation, and that was then weighted at 50%. So that was the feedback that we got from HCD, is that they would be open to us decreasing the weight of that base allocation, increasing the weight of the factors. This is something that had been considered actually earlier in the planning processes of preparing the RENA. We had presented a higher weighting of as much as 20% for each of the 5 factors, equaling 100% total, and not providing any separate weight to the base allocation. Instead, that was just serving as an initial kind of evening of each jurisdiction's distribution of units. But in consultation with your planning directors group, they had advised that we decrease that weighting of the factors, finding that it was a more agreeable region-wide to be able to allocate them in this way. So at the October 13th Planning Directors meeting, we had presented all of this information to the planning directors, and our recommendation as consultants was that you not change your allocation of units or the weighting of those factors based on the fact that HCD was simply expressing an openness to it. It was not a requirement, and the planning directors group supported this action. So we are not proposing any change there. So going over what we are planning to change. Oops, I'm sorry. As I mentioned, we did increase the allocation of units for the city of Biggs to accommodate that legislative requirement, but this requires a little bit of maneuvering of units between a couple of jurisdictions, because we are assigned as a region an overall allocation of units in each income tier that we must reach. And if you recall, our methodology assigns units by each jurisdiction as well. And so first we assign units by jurisdiction, and then we distribute those units by income tier. So to shift the city of Biggs to add in an additional unit, bringing them up to a total of 1 for the low income tier, we decreased their allocation of units in the very low income tier by 1 unit. And then to balance that shifting, we did the opposite with the city of Chico. The city of Chico was chosen because they had the largest share of allocation of units in those income tiers. And so we thought that that would just be the least impactful overall. As I said before, we did recommend that you maintain the weighting that was proposed in the draft methodology. And then the final thing that we did change, though, was to address some errors that resulted from rounding. Of course, we can only distribute units in whole numbers, and our methodology does not work in the formulaic version in whole numbers. So we did some rounding, and then we needed to go back and make some manual adjustments to those rounded numbers to make sure that we are achieving the overall requirement for the distribution of units by income tier and by jurisdiction as assigned to the region by HCD. So as we made those adjustments, that resulted in a change of 1 unit for the total allocation for the town of Paradise. And then in addition to that, there was a change in up to 2 units for the low and very low income tiers, just shifting units between those tiers for a couple of jurisdictions, really all jurisdictions except for Gridley. And then for all jurisdictions, we shifted units between the moderate and above moderate tiers by up to 6 units. And again, in the grand scheme of things, these are really pretty minor adjustments. It was really just to make sure that we are achieving the overall requirements from HCD while maintaining the methodology that has already been vetted by this group and in close consultation. So this next slide, if I can get it to advance, will show the final proposed allocation under this revised methodology. You see that if, let's see, the town of Paradise, I believe, went up by 1 unit. in this overall income tier. All other jurisdictions allocations stayed the same in this income tier, or in the total allocation. But as I said, we adjusted units between income tiers in a couple of categories here. Apologize, these are not wanting to advance for me. Once you have an adopted methodology, and we hope that you will take action to adopt this as the final methodology today, the next step is to incorporate that into a regional housing needs plan, or RHNP document. The RHNP is another requirement of state law, although there are not strict requirements for what it actually entails. Actually, the only requirement is that it includes the methodology and some kind of description of that methodology and how it was developed. And really, that's all encapsulated in the existing methodology on its own. So what we went ahead and did was to follow the model that was set by BCAG in past RHNP plan documents. This is a format that local practitioners are already familiar with. So we wanted to continue to follow that. We've modernized it in some ways, just making sure that the references to the legislation are up to date. And we're really aiming to make sure that this served to make this a very accessible document. If someone came back in the future with any questions about the methodology, it's all really wrapped up very cleanly here to create a user-friendly resource for anyone. It provides the context for how the methodology was developed in terms of the legislation and other pieces. So we've broken it into 4 parts. That includes an introduction that breaks out the legislative requirements. Those are further detailed in an appendix that has a complete breakout of the applicable legislation, a review of the factors and objectives. Again, those are included in the legislation, but these are very strict requirements linked to the methodology itself. So we lay those out very cleanly. The next section is a review of the regional housing needs determination, or the overall regional allocation that HCD provided. This includes details on how HCD, in consultation with BCAG staff, computed the allocation and how units are distinguished as being associated with either typical growth versus rebuilding those units that were destroyed in the Camp Fire. The third section details stakeholder outreach conducted and the role of BCAG staff. And the planning directors as the technical advisors, and finally the board of directors, you all as the decision-making authority for this document. And then the final section, as I said, is the complete methodology that we are aiming to have you all approve today. Without any additional changes, it's just taking that methodology that was previously provided as a standalone document and folding it into this overall document. And then there are some appendix items with additional supplementary information. So as a next step after today's meeting, this you all receiving the RHNP document in draft form will trigger the start of a 45-day review period. Member jurisdictions can take this opportunity to consider whether or not they would like to present any appeals to BCAG. We do hope that that's not the case. We aimed to create a consensus-driven methodology and think that we did. But this is a period of time that's open, and it's a legal requirement that this period be open for that process. If there is any feedback that we receive from you all today on the methodology, or sorry, on the RHNP document itself, we would take the next month to make those revisions. The planning directors have not, to my knowledge, provided any recommended or requested revisions to the RHNP document, so it would come down to input received from this body. And then on December 10th at your board meeting, you will be asked to review the final RHNP document and adopt that. And then for the local jurisdictions, the important next step of this is to adopt the housing element. Those are due in June of 2022. And that, I believe, concludes my update. I would be happy to take questions from any of you, though. And I, again, just want to take this opportunity to thank you for inviting us to be a part of this process. It's really been a pleasure to work with your jurisdictions throughout the development of this methodology. And I really applaud you all and your leadership for making this a very collaborative and respectful process.
Is there any public comment on this matter, by email or otherwise? Call the roll and see if anybody has any comments or questions, please.
Board Member Conley.
No.
Board Member Lucero.
No, I'm sorry for lateness. I had an 8 a.m. that went late.
Board Member Ritter.
No comments or questions, thank you.
Board Member Lambert.
No.
Board Member Teeter.
No questions.
Board Member Thompson. No. Board Member Stone.
No questions. Thank you.
Board Member Cry. Board Member Jones. No questions.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept, or I can tell somebody else move, I'll second if somebody
Okay,
else.
okay, who's I couldn't, you're breaking. Yeah, Tammy Ritter?
Yes.
Okay, great, Tammy. Thank you for that second. I appreciate that. Is there any comments or any questions? All those in favor, call the roll. We can't.
Board Member Conley.
Aye, you're slowing my gig up here, you know.
Board Member Lucero.
Aye.
Board Member Ritter.
Aye.
Board Member Lambert.
Aye.
Board Member Teeter.
Aye.
Board Member Thompson. Aye. Board Member Stone.
Aye.
Board Member Jones. Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. We'll move on to number 5. Approval of resolution 2020-2021-5 for allocation of regional early action planning. It's a REAP grant funds. Chris, you're up again.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you may recall, I guess it was back in February, back before the world changed a bit, at the BCAG board meeting that this board approved a resolution authorizing the 25% advance allocation of the REAP funds. We received those funds from the state Department of Housing and Community Development, and we've been using them to basically develop the regional housing needs plan update that we just talked about. So we have this other 75% of the funds left to request from HCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. And so we've been coordinating with member jurisdictions to sort of determine how best to spend that remaining chunk of funds. There's a pretty good amount of funding, $662,500 or so dollars. And there's sort of 2 ways we can go with those funds. Either BCAG can kind of come up with some planning studies itself that sort of get to increasing housing production in the region, which is sort of the overarching goal of the REAP program. Or we can sub-allocate the funds to member jurisdictions for them to use on projects that increase housing production in the region. They have to be planning type documents. You can't fund actual construction projects with it. And so in conferring with the planning directors group over the last couple of months, we basically determined that we're going to sub-allocate these funds, almost the entirety of it. We're going to take some for BCAG staff to administer the program. So to those member jurisdictions for several projects that we noted in the memo. And so, you know, the purpose of the agenda item today is just to approve this resolution accepting that $662,500 in grant funds. We're still coordinating with your member jurisdictions to determine the exact details of the projects. The 4 that we listed here of the 5, preliminarily, those are the projects that we're going to fund. We're still coordinating exact tasks and subtasks and how much funding at that sort of level of detail. We're not there yet, but we want to get this resolution approved at the October meeting so that in November, hopefully we could submit the funding request to HCD to bring the funding in, because some of the jurisdictions are hoping to get going on these projects sooner versus later. And so if the board approves the resolution today, what we would do at the December 10th meeting is come back and give you a more detailed list of tasks and subtasks for these projects. But it looks like most likely this will be the final list is these projects. So we'll come back around and give you more information in December. So, and again, you know, the grant program, it's aimed to increase housing production. This is sort of the grant program objectives in the memo. And so we're happy to have this list of projects that we do to provide the funding to for each of the member jurisdictions, because we feel like it's going to more directly result in housing production rather than some of the more kind of higher level 30,000-foot planning studies you can do. I think they all look like they're good projects and they all meet the grant program objectives. So again, we'll have more information next month. So happy to answer any questions.
Any public comment on this matter, my phone or others? Call the roll and see if there's comment.
Board Member Jones? I don't have any comments. Board Member Stone?
Wait.
Board Member, we'll come back to him. Board Member Thompson? No. Board Member Teeter?
None.
Board Member Lambert?
None.
Board Member Ritter?
No, thank you.
Lucero?
I just had one question. I was wondering, Chris, are you also working with Butte County Housing Authority?
This has been primarily coordinated with the member jurisdiction planning staff. So it's sort of up to them to nominate projects. So no, we have not.
Is it possible to include them, or does this type of funding preclude them?
The funding can only be allocated to BCAG member jurisdictions. So, you know, if the county planning staff wanted to propose something in concert with housing authority, you know, that would work. It'd be up to county planning staff to bring that forward to us.
Okay, I was just curious because they just released a lot of information about all of the affordable housing projects that were in the pike. And so I just wondered if there was some planning that could occur around that.
Okay.
Board Member Stone?
None, thank you.
And Board Member Conley?
Can you scroll that up a little bit? Stop. Up a little more. Where are we now? Down. I'm sorry. Where is it mentioning South Orville or the sewer?
Further up, I think it's number 2.
Okay, right there. Yeah. I just want to comment that that's a very, very important thing that was pointed out in the general plan a dozen years ago as a place to grow, but we've never been able to get the infrastructure out there.
Yeah.
And it's not good agricultural land. It's not under use at this time, and I really support that moving forward. That's my comment.
Okay.
And there was no public comment. We've been through the roll. All right, entertain a motion.
Move to approve. This is Tammy.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any last minute questions? All those in favor, call the roll. Man, I want to speed us on. But I think this is best to always call the roll, especially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Get a huge record that one.
Board Member Jones? Aye. Board Member Stone?
Randall, you're
Board
up.
Member Stone?
Aye.
Board Member Thompson? Aye. Board Member Teeter?
Aye.
Board Member Lambert?
Aye.
Board Member Ritter?
Aye.
Board Member Lucero?
Aye.
Board Member Conley.
Aye. Okay, we're gonna move on to number 6, approve a 2021 unmet transit needs assessment and finding. Jim, you're in the seat. Morning.
Good morning. Morning, Board. This is the BCAG required annual look at our transit needs, and it's required by the TDA. And we need to do this in order to make sure there are no unmet transit needs that are out there before we can divert any money for other purposes such as streets and roads. During the month of March, we had a 30-day outreach period in which testimony was collected. We asked via email, phone, mail. We had an online comment form, and we promoted this period through the newspaper. We had flyers on all our buses. We also had it on our website, and we also did an additional email to the community social service agencies to make sure they were aware of it. After the comments were received, we compiled them into an analysis report, and that report was shared with our SSTAC, or Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, in a meeting on September 28th. They reviewed it, and during the meeting, they unanimously supported staff's recommendation. Basically, we're required to bring a recommendation to the board of directors with one of 3 findings. 1, there are no unmet transit needs. 2, there are no unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. And 3, there are unmet transit needs, including those that are reasonable to meet. The finding for this assessment was that there are no unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. So that's what's being presented before the board today to accept that finding. And once the board approves it, we have a resolution which we will send to Caltrans, which will complete our obligation for this year.
Is there public comment on this matter? Okay, let's call a roll, see if there's comments.
Board Member Conley.
No.
Board Member Lucero.
I just had a question about the transit dependency indicators in Butte County, where the table that identified poverty indicators, which seemed pretty extreme in Oroville East, Oroville South, I believe it was. I'm trying to find it. Yankee Hill. I just wondered what that exactly meant and how that factored into this.
You know, I put that in there, it's required. I actually get that information from Brian, and so he would actually probably be the one that would have to answer that question. I don't know if he is there and wants to answer it now, or.
He's on. Is Brian on?
Nope, he's out.
Brian's coming.
Hey, Brian, we're talking to you.
Sorry about that. Can you repeat the question?
Oh,
You had a
I was
question
just,
about the poverty indicator? Go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
sorry. I just was asking about the poverty indicators in some of the areas it seemed kind of high, and how that factored into the overall analysis when looking at transit needs. I just wondered, you know, where that breaking point was, and how this report deals with that. It seemed like a lot of them were in Oroville and Yankee Hill. I mean, there were some kind of high ones.
For the unmet transit needs themselves?
I'm just looking at the poverty indicators, and how that, I guess, how are the transit needs met for those that are showing high poverty indicators? I would assume that a lot of those folks don't have a way to get around. So I just wondered.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought you were asking. Yeah, I thought you were asking how do we determine those are high poverty indicators? So that would have been Brian. But as far as how they tie into the assessment, I guess that would be me.
Okay.
We try to look at areas that are more transit dependent, and if so, we can, try to provide the service there. However, those areas in Oroville that were higher indicators didn't have the populations to support additional transit. So, I mean, if all things being equal, if there's enough population in those areas, we would definitely try to include that in, for additional transit. But those areas did not have a population to warrant it.
Okay. And just for my own edification, like what is that population level? Like how do you determine, enough of population for transit needs?
You look at historic ridership patterns, and so you see the number of riders in an area, in the population in that area, and you extrapolate how many people typically will ride based on a determined population number, and then so you just apply that to the population in that area.
Okay, so that means like if you don't have transit to that area already, it would seem like you're extrapolating something from already a number that may or may not exist, right?
Well, what we do, for example, you try to find, somewhat similar areas. Obviously, they're a lower poverty area. It may be hard to find exact, but what you do is your best estimate at it. Like, for example, you may take some areas in Magalia that have current transit and try to find maybe an area there with similar features and determine the ridership there based on the service we provide. So the best thing you can do is just look around, try to find similar areas as best you can and try to extrapolate that data.
And did you kind of mention what the reasonable to meet definition is? Again, it has to meet.
Well, and one of the things on a reasonable to meet is it has to have a certain fare box recovery. You can't just put service in an area if it's not going to meet fare box. And so that's one of our indicators. That's one of the main indicators. So that's one of the reasons you do this, so that you're not just wasting transit money. Because if you put service in an area, we may want to put it there, but you only may get a 5 or 6% return on your fare box. And according to state guidelines, that doesn't cut it. And so that's what we're looking at when we're looking at what something that's reasonable to meet. And based on our analysis, service in that area would not be reasonable to meet.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Supervisor. But the fare box recovery is only at 10%, correct? If it might only meet 5 or 6%, but all we have to meet is 10%. Isn't that correct?
For the rural area, urban fare box recovery is 20%, and rural fare box recovery is 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's just the threshold we use to add additional service that's identified in the agreement between the regional transit and the member jurisdictions. Cities or county can always add service if they want and pay for it, and it doesn't have to meet fare box, but that would have to come from, let's say in this case, the county saying we want to serve it anyway, so we would cost that out, and then the county would pay for that additional service. I just wanted to mention that.
Has that ever happened? Has the county ever done that?
I can't recall ever adding service where it wasn't required.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We airport service through a different LC top program, and then we kept it on. So it established service, so. But it was basically a paying for additional service. We've never had the situation where a jurisdiction said, I want to provide the service and paid for it. But if it did, after 2 years, if it were meeting fare box, the required fare box recovery ratio, 10 or 20, that would then be folded into the regional service automatically.
We've actually had situations, for example, one time Enloe Hospital, when they had a lot of employees living up in Paradise Magalia area, they actually funded a route because they wanted to have their employees have a way to get down to the hospital down here in Chico. And so they funded it and they paid for it for a couple of years. And turns out there was enough ridership on it that it was actually meeting the requirement. So we ended up incorporating it into our system. So even though they weren't a jurisdiction, it was still an agency that paid for it until once it met fare box recovery, we took it over.
Oh, okay, very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Ritter.
Are you asking if I have any questions, or are you asking if I'm?
Any questions?
Oh,
No.
Board Member Lambert.
None.
Board Member Teeter.
None.
Board Member Thompson. No. Board Member Stone.
None, thank you.
And Board Member Jones. None as well.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. And we're looking for, there are no unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, call the roll. Call the roll.
Board Member Conley.
Aye.
Board Member Lucero.
Aye.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Aye.
Board Member Ritter.
Uh-oh, got connection problems.
What was that? I'm sorry.
I said aye, yes, A-OK.
Thank you.
Board Member Lambert.
Aye.
Board Member Teeter.
Aye.
Board Member Thompson. Aye. Board Member Stone.
Aye, thank you.
Board Member Jones. Aye.
Okay. Sorry, folks, I'm messing around here and got my agenda messed up. 'Cause I was, I don't know what I was doing. Here we go. I was really interested in that one there. All right, so number 7, authorize executive director to negotiate and execute agreement for BCAG BRT operation facility electric vehicle underground charging infrastructure. Andy.
Yes, thank you. In December of 2018, the Air Resources Board, in following up with the emerging direction of the state of California to move towards electric vehicles, put in a regulation that all transit agencies need to move to a 100% electrical fleet by 2040. So our contribution to that is establishing an infrastructure here that we can accommodate the vehicles as we acquire them over the years to actually charge them on site, either during routes or in between routes overnight. I had circulated a request for proposals to solicit a design build firm, essentially someone that could come in that had the ability to design the infrastructure and also build it. Met with 2 consultants, one from Reading, one from Sacramento. I received a sole proposal from the Reading firm, which was very incomplete. They were only able to address about 50% of the proposal. Since then, I've talked with a couple of other interested groups that think that this might be something they would like to be involved with. So I'm going to recirculate the proposal request, and in receiving those proposal requests, this issue or this item is particularly to give authorization to the executive director for us to, with a selected consultant construction firm, enter into an agreement to design and build the underground infrastructure. And we do have the funds in place to do that work through the LC TOP program, which is a low carbon emissions program with the state. And those funds will sunset in the second quarter of 2021. So I'd like to move forward with get the solicitation out, bring these folks in, get them under contract, and get that infrastructure in place, which would essentially involve a new PG&E service to the site at the northwest corner of the property, and then everything underground out to where our buses are parked under the solar canopies, just up to the pavement grade. And then from there, we would be able to move forward with a separate effort to purchase chargers of the universal brand that would apply to any bus. So this effort is to essentially just get the underground infrastructure in place to accommodate the charging infrastructure.
Any public comment on this matter?
None.
Let's call the roll.
Got a
Board Member
question, Bill.
Jones.
Oh.
We're gonna get to you. Everybody gets a chance.
Oh, okay. I thought you were calling for the vote. Sorry, the sound is wonky.
It's just the role to give comments, but
Oh, okay.
definitely we want to hear from you.
Board Member Stone.
No questions, thank you.
Board Member Thompson. No, thank you. Board Member Teeter.
None.
Board Member Lambert.
None.
Board Member Ritter.
So my question is about why it was put forth in an RFP as a design build. We've been having discussions about this on the board level. Sorry, I'm trying to move your paper on my screen. It's not working. That why would we go with design build? It seems that there's a lot less entities that are available to do both design and build. And as it seems kind of indicated, you only had one response and it was very incomplete. Why would we not simply go with the design portion of it? Can you enlighten me a little bit?
Yeah, so sure. Yeah, I've been through this process enough times, and design build has typically not been something that I would pursue because we have a very good understanding of what the requirements are and the design criteria is such that we can hire someone to do a design and then put it out for construction. In this particular case, the amount of work is fairly small. It's fairly unique, more than I would have thought, to an electrical design firm that also does construction. And they're in utilizing the criteria available to accommodate charging infrastructure, in contacting several other agencies about how they've gone about doing their underground work. A lot of them said the most efficient way that they were able to get an underground system in place was to do it as a design build, because more contractors are taking on the responsibility of understanding what goes into the actual construction of the design process. And what I've also found is that a lot of the designers, like say an electrical engineering firm, a designer is not very in tune with what contractors can build, typically do build, or get permits to build. So that's why I went ahead and moved down a design build type route where I could get a contractor as the lead, and they would hire the electrical sub-consultants necessary to help them to design what they ultimately will build. The other issue that I came across, and the reason we didn't get very many proposals, is the process of submitting a proposal takes a significant amount of marketing funds that this magnitude of project, which is not very big, it's probably less than $100,000, between $50,000 and $100,000. They simply don't want to invest the time necessary to develop a proposal according to the criteria that we have out there. So, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, mostly it does. I mean, I guess it's still using subs, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Lucero.
I just had one question. I'm just curious how, because technology changes so much, how we're assured that, what we do today is going to be good for what happens, tomorrow, figuratively speaking. How do you build the future into infrastructure that you're putting underground? And I just wondered, how that works, or if that's even a possibility.
That's a good question, and I can say that it's very difficult to predict how the technology will change in the future. What is likely not to change is whatever the technology is at the, let's say, the delivery side. In other words, where it comes up out of the ground to the pavement and you bolt on or plug in a charger. Getting to that particular point likely will have some technology changes or software or firmware that accepts the electricity coming in, but for the most part, it's getting the electricity from the PG&E service underground through the several hundred feet of conduit that's going to supply whatever that technology is. So the amount of electricity that you need probably is not going to change a tremendous amount, and we can build that out to some, level of estimate as to what we think we'll need by just having enough conduits in place to move the electricity there. So I think we'll be okay to, put something underground that will accommodate the volume of electricity needed to charge things. It'll be that technology that changes a little bit, probably right at the pavement service where we attach our chargers.
Okay, thank you.
And Board Member Conley.
No comments. This time I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Oh, we got first and seconds and thirds. Does clerk get somebody there? All right, we're good. Okay, call the roll for the vote.
Board Member Conley.
Aye.
Board Member Lucero.
Aye.
Board Member Ritter.
Aye.
Board Member Lambert.
Aye.
Board Member Teeter.
Aye.
Board Member Thompson. Aye. And Board Member Stone.
Aye.
Board Member Jones. Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Up next is items for information. The number 8, draft 2020 regional transportation plan.
Good morning. BCAG as the RTPA MPO is required to prepare and update its long-range regional transportation plan sustainable community strategy. This agenda item is to formally inform you all that the draft is complete and is right in front of Director Clark right there. The document includes all required elements, a policy element, action, financial, and a sustainable community strategy. The long-range plan also includes a transportation and air quality conformity determination, as well as an environmental impact report to satisfy CEQA requirements. The document right there is 5.5 inches thick. All material is posted online, broken by chapter, or the entire document. The notice of availability has gone out in accordance with BCAG's public participation process through our interest distribution list, our advisory committees and whatnot. Regarding public outreach, due to COVID-19 concerns, our next public workshop has been scheduled for November 5th via Zoom, actually in this room here. Brian Lazagna and I had our third series of public workshops, I think a little over a month ago here, and we did get some participation, which made it nice, and we were able to record it and post it for future reference. If there's a need, we can translate it as necessary. So the next public workshop's November 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. in this room. Currently, the document has been distributed to our state and federal partners, and hard copies are available at the Chico and Orville Public Library, as well as here. An extensive PowerPoint presentation is also posted and available at BCAG's website. BCAG is required to hold 2 public hearings to solicit comments. The official comment period started October 8th and runs through November 22nd. However, as normal with all our other planning documents, we always take comments. Staff does request the board chair to open a public hearing to solicit comments for the record.
Has there been any public comment in front of this? Okay, so Call the roll, see if any board member has a question or comment, please.
Board Member Jones. I don't have any questions. Board Member Reynolds. Board Member Stone.
Nope, he says no.
Thank
Board
you.
Member Thompson. Thank you. Board Member Teeter.
None.
Board Member Lambert.
None.
Board Member Ritter.
No, thank you.
Board Member Lucero.
No, thank you.
And Board Member Conley.
No, so at this time, we're going to announce this is open for public review. And looking forward to the next workshop. That's all we can do. Next up is number 9. Thank you, good job. Next up, draft 2020 Regional Housing Needs Plan. Chris. Where is he? There he is.
Back.
We're worried. I almost hit the dog.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, this is an information item, and we covered a lot of this under agenda item 4. The draft regional housing needs plan has been completed, and it's out for a 45-day review period. So we included it as an attachment for the board, for the board's information. It contains the final methodology that we discussed in the previous item. And so, you know, the final methodology is really the heart of the regional housing needs plan. So I'm not sure if we'll get any substantive comments between now and December 10th when it's subject to be brought to the board for approval. But if there are any changes requested, we'll make those changes ahead of the December 10th meeting. So that's really all I have. I think we covered it pretty sufficiently under the previous item. Be happy to answer any questions.
Board Member Conley.
No, I have no questions.
Board Member Lucero.
I have some questions, but I'm going to reserve them because I missed the presentation. So I will ask offline.
Okay, sounds good.
Board Member Ritter.
No questions, thank you.
Board Member Lambert.
Yeah, to leave.
Thank you. Board Member Teeter.
Aye.
Board Member Thompson. No, thank you. Board Member Stone.
None, thank you.
That was supposed to be.
And Board Member Jones.
Wake up, man.
I don't have any either.
Over. Put me to sleep. Sorry.
Aye, aye.
Okay, are we done? All right, everybody, that was a great meeting. Thanks for putting up with all this. I think I'll be ready for a regular meeting sometime. So now, are there any items from the floor by email or phone or anything like that? So any public comment by any board member? I see none. So we're going to adjourn. Our next meeting will be Thursday, December 10th, hopefully at the BCAG Board Meeting room over there. All right? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.